Election Day is less than a week away, and while Democrats have felt good about their chances of regaining control of the House of Representatives, they face a tougher challenge in the U.S. Senate. Of the 35 Senate seats up this year, tight races in a number of states could end up adding to the current Republican majority there. To talk about some of these races, I'm joined by Brandon Smith of Indiana Public Broadcasting, Christopher Conover of Arizona Public Media, and Chaz Sisk of WPLN Public Radio in Nashville, Tennessee. We welcome all three of you to the NewsHour. Christopher Conover, let's start with you. In Arizona, what are voters talking about? What are they focused on in this Senate race?
The big focus here is immigration in many ways because Arizona is a border state. I'm in Tucson, which is one of the larger cities in the state. We're less than 100 miles, 60 to 70 miles from the border. So the border is always an issue, even in local races here, certainly in a federal race. The other issues are the same that we hear across the country with health care, and we hear a little bit about education here, but it's mainly health care and the border, with the border and immigration being number one.
And Christopher, I should have, of course, named the candidates in your state. They are Kyrsten Sinema, the Democrat, Martha McSally, the Republican. But let's turn to Tennessee now and to Chaz Sisk. This is another Republican-held seat. What are voters talking about there?
Yeah, this has definitely been a nationalized election. A lot of the conversation is around those national issues, especially here towards the end of the campaign. Immigration has been a big issue, and a lot of people are telling us at the polls that they're thinking a lot about it. And that's in large part thanks to Congressman Blackburn, who's the Republican nominee, bringing it up a lot on the campaign trail. And we also hear a lot about health care, which is something that the Democrats have been pushing. The Democratic nominee, Phil Bredesen, is a former governor, but he's also a health care executive. And so he's felt very comfortable talking about that issue. So those national issues have really been playing pretty prominently in this race.
National issues over particularly local in Tennessee. Now, Brandon Smith, Indiana. Again, this is a Senate seat held now by Democrats that the Republicans would like to take away. And in fact, last night you had a debate in Indiana between the incumbent Democrat Joe Donnelly and his Republican challenger Mike Braun. It happened to have been moderated by the NewsHour's own Amna Nawaz. I want to play first, before I come to you for our audience, just a bit of an exchange between the two of them, and this had to do with health care. Let's watch and listen.
It was called the Affordable Care Act, which Joe was all for. It's the Unaffordable Care Act. It was doomed to fail because you had big government get in cahoots with big health care, specifically big health insurance. I took on the health insurance companies 10 years ago, and regardless of what his Democratic talking points are, I would never be for any replacement that doesn't cover pre-existing conditions.
What he said is not true. Mike supports a lawsuit that would end the Affordable Care Act, that would end pre-existing conditions. So all of you watching out there tonight, if you have someone in your family with diabetes, with arthritis, with asthma, their coverage goes away if Mike's lawsuit is successful. As I said, that's how important this is. Those are the facts, and he can't deny that.
So that was Mike Braun first and then Joe Donnelly. So Brandon Smith, has health care been a big issue in this race?
Absolutely. Like my two colleagues before me have said, healthcare and immigration are two issues that a lot of voters and the candidates themselves are talking a lot about here in Indiana. I'll add one that they didn't talk about because it is an issue here, which is sort of an economic issue, the tariffs that President Trump has imposed. The two biggest industries in Indiana are agriculture and manufacturing. So there are folks in this state that really don't like the tariffs and steel workers up north who really do.
So how is that playing? I mean, the agriculture sector doesn't like them, right?
Right, and Mike Braun has had a little bit of trouble with that. He's actually had to sort of change his position over time. He's all for Donald Trump, and he says that a lot, but recently he started to take a harder line on the tariffs and say that, you know, if he gets into the Senate, that he'll tell the president to get rid of them, which he wasn't saying earlier in the campaign.
All right, let's go back to Arizona. Christopher Conover and the Trump factor. Martha McSally, the Republican, was keeping her distance, I think it's fair to say, earlier on in this contest, but now she seems to be fully embracing the president.
That's incredibly fair to say. When she was just a member of the U.S. House representing Southern Arizona, she definitely kept the president at arm's length. But as soon as she declared that she was running for the U.S. Senate, she really embraced President Trump. And she had a primary with two strong Trump supporters, including Maricopa County, or former Maricopa County Sheriff Joe Arpaio, who had campaigned with the president across the country, and the president actually pardoned earlier this year. So she made a change in that way. Of course, Kyrsten Sinema, the Democrat, is not embracing the president. The president has sent emails on behalf of Martha McSally and has come to Arizona to campaign on her behalf. His sons are here campaigning on her behalf. The vice president has been here campaigning on her behalf.
Now to Tennessee, Chaz Sisk, the president has, or I should say Marsha Blackburn, the Republican candidate for the Senate, has consistently been a fan of President Trump. How much of a factor is he there?
Definitely a very big factor. I mean, President Trump still is very popular in Tennessee, every bit as popular as he was on Election Day. And the idea that she's embraced President Trump is really quite true, literally. You see her campaign ads, and there's actually an image of her embracing the president from one of his first rallies on her behalf. So he has definitely thrown his support behind her. He's already been here twice to Tennessee. He's going to be coming here a third time between now and Election Day. So definitely, she's very much tying herself to President Trump and trying to portray herself as the ally of him.
And in Indiana, Brandon Smith, you have a different situation there in a Democratic incumbent, Joe Donnelly, but he's tried not to distance himself too much from the president.
No, not at all. In fact, you'll hear Joe Donnelly say more than almost anything else that he's voted with President Trump 62% of the time. He's a Democrat, but he knows that he's in a relatively Republican state here in Indiana, and so he portrays himself as a really conservative Democrat or an independent sort of lawmaker who, as he puts it, votes with the president when it's good for Indiana and votes against him when it's not.
I want to finally come back to all three of you on voter engagement. I mean, we learned today that early voting around the country is surpassing what it was in the last midterm elections in 2014. Something like more than 24 million people have already voted early compared to about 20 million 4 years ago. Back to you, Christopher Conover. I mean, how much voter interest do you see? Are people talking about this race? Is it getting a lot of attention?
Oh, sure. Everywhere you go, people are talking about this race. You can't escape it. It's on your TV. If you're watching commercial TV, every ad break, and that's almost all you see during the ad break. So, and in coffee shops and everything else, that's what people are talking about. When it comes to early voting, Arizona's a big early voting state. Early ballots went out a month ago. And at this point, I looked at the numbers right before we all sat down, about 50% of early ballots are back at this point.
Chaz Sisk, what about in Tennessee? What kind of voter interest, voter engagement are you seeing?
Yeah, it's definitely very high. I mean, just as in Arizona, definitely every ad break is full of commercials for the two candidates, as well as a very competitive governor's race here in Tennessee. That's pushed early voting up over 1 million people, and this is a state of 6 million people total, perhaps about 4 million voters total. So 1 million of them have already gone out there and cast ballots. And definitely, you see lines at the early voting locations. We only have in-person early voting. Nothing, can't do it by mail. So you can see a lot of people out there, even at the polling locations, really getting engaged in the election.
And how about in Indiana, Brandon?
Yeah, in 2014, Indiana had the lowest voter turnout in the country, but we didn't have a Senate race on the ballot, and this time we do, and that's been drawing the most interest, I think, of any other race, particularly as it sort of nationalizes out to be a bit of a referendum on the Trump administration and his sort of agenda.
And Brandon, one other question, in terms of the campaigns being organized all over the state, I mean, do you see evidence of that?
Oh, absolutely, particularly for the Democrats. I mean, the Republicans have a great get-out-the-vote machine here in Indiana because it is such a Republican-controlled state. But Democrats, and particularly Joe Donnelly, the candidate, is everywhere. And he's been everywhere for all 6 years he's been in the Senate.
What about that quick question, Christopher Conover, about organization?
Everybody here is very organized. I get emails constantly from both parties about get-out-the-vote events all over the state, from door knocking and all kinds of things all over the state, every major metro area. So very, very organized on both sides. Arizona tends to lean Republican, but Democrats see an opening in this race.
And just quickly in Tennessee.
Yeah, absolutely. All over the state, you're seeing signs of organization. Even in East Tennessee, which has been the Republican stronghold, it's where Lamar Alexander and Bob Corker are from. You're definitely seeing a pretty high level of Democratic organization there.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Thank you all three. With just 6 days to go, Chaz Sisk with WPLN, Nashville Public Radio, Brandon Smith, Indiana Public Broadcasting, and Christopher Conover, Arizona Public Media. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.